Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Crapper with myself, Tim Appleton, and joining me tonight we have Sean Hall
Tomorrow.
and Peter Turner.
Hello, good to be back.
Great. Well, tonight we're going to do a Beatles episode. As Sean pointed out to me the other day, we only do Beatles episodes on major religious holidays. Last one was at Christmas, and now it's Easter. So as a celebration of you know, I
The
don't know,
resurrection.
our Lord being resurrected, we're going to talk about the Beatles again. So the idea is that we're going to do a best of the Beatles outtakes, 15 to 1, and do you remember 15 to 1?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah, my uncle was on that once with William G. Stewart.
Right. William
Yeah,
G. Stewart,
yeah.
the least charismatic
Mm.
quiz show host in the history of television.
Yeah, he was like a sort of funeral director or something, wasn't he? Horrible attitude.
He was, yeah.
People get a question wrong, you go, no, next. Um, yeah, so we're going to go 15 to 1. So the idea is obviously we're counting down to our, our favourite Beatles outtake. We'll get back to the rules maybe in a second. First, do you want to do roundup of the week? Our popular item. Sean, what
Well,
have you been up to this week?
well, this week I've been mainly clearing sludge from the bottom of my pond and doing it whilst listening to In the Land of Grey and Pink by Caravan. And I've had quite an enjoyable time listening to that album. Uh, and also,
Did you
I've
say,
been
sorry,
following.
hang on, we've got a connection problem. Did you say you've been cleaning sludge from the bottom of the pond? I think we had a connection problem there.
Yeah, I've been cleaning sludge from the bottom of my pond
I
whilst
see.
uh, in the land of grey and pink.
I see.
And I've also been highly perturbed by the Who story. I
Ah,
don't know if you've heard, young Zach Starkey, 59. uh, uh, he was fired from the Who, wasn't he, for like 2 days, 48 hours. And rumor has it that Ringo found out Roger Daltrey and had a go at him over the phone. I don't know how true that is. You
Great.
know,
wow. Yeah,
yeah.
it was a bit of a throwback, wasn't it, to the good old days?
Mm,
Trust the Who, to do a sort of intervention of that kind. Suddenly we're going to sack the drummer in a very public
yeah,
fashion.
yeah. Because he was overplaying.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
This from the
Like,
band that
yeah,
was, had Keith Moon on the
the
drums.
most overplaying drummer ever.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Yeah. Roger Daltrey's got form with his drummers, hasn't he? That's the other thing.
Mm.
All right. Yeah. Well, good. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Peter. What
Okay.
have you been up to this week?
Can I just point out that it's really interesting that Sean was doing one of the most horrible tasks, therefore making the Land of Pink and Grey seem like some symphony. Um, I've actually been away in Sorrento, which is the Bay of Naples, with my mother,
Is
for
that
a week. And the main thing I learned actually was that the hotel manager, who I saw now and again, sort of coming into the reception, looked almost identical to Dave Brubeck, which I thought was rather good. And I could not get it out of my head.
right?
And
Right.
there
Right.
was also a waiter, and I couldn't place him, but I think it's like a Disney character. I think I don't know. Despicable Me, I think it was the guy out
Oh,
of that film. He looked
brilliant,
exactly like
brilliant.
him.
Mm.
You should leave references like that for a jazz podcast.
I know. Sorry.
Hotel manager looked like Dave Brubeck. Anything else interesting happening in Italy?
Not particularly. No Vesuvian eruptions. Went to Pompeii, Herculaneum,
Right.
and drunk lovely lemonade from a farm where they actually make it. It's the land of lemons, they call it. Very nice.
Mm.
Very good. Right. I mean, I haven't really got anything to add. I got a bit sick earlier in the week, so I just stayed home,
Oh,
and I don't know. I fixed the door on the lounge.
good
How?
work.
So
How? How?
it was a sliding door and it had come off its rail.
Right.
This is podcasting gold, isn't it? This. Well, good. So that's the end of roundup of the
Yeah.
week.
Phew.
Another one of those next time or not. So let's move on to the rules. So we thought that we should just set the premise up for this. The idea was that we were going to find our top 15, least favourite to most favourite Beatles outtakes, and how we were defining Beatles outtakes was any song written by a member of the Beatles while they were in the Beatles, but which didn't appear on any official Beatles releases, right? So it could include stuff that they, threw in the bin, or stuff that they wrote for other people, that kind of thing. And I don't know what kind of logic is going to emerge here. How did you find compiling this list, Peter? Did you find it an easy task?
Well, it was made a lot easier by the fact that you kind of supplied us with a list. I think I would have been flailing around, like just not sure what was happening. But I managed to pick from the list, and the list is pretty, authentic, I think. But I just found with some of them, I just thought, was that really a song that was hanging around? Mainly the stuff at the end, the sort of solo stuff in the early 70s. Was that actually hanging around, or has that just been written? And how would we know anyway, unless you'd somehow discovered the song in some outtake or something? I think we just have to sort of go within sort of timescales, don't we? Which is, it's likely to have been hanging around if it came out immediately.
Yeah.
But it is difficult to know that. I also found that, which I'd never really thought about before, which was, it's kind of like, bear with me with this sort of analogy here, but it's like, when Lennon and McCartney are together, you imagine it's like water, like it just everything seems to flow somehow. And yet when you pull them apart, you see these extremes, don't you? Like the hydrogen and oxygen are suddenly really obvious, which is, McCartney goes off on these sort of whims, doesn't he? And Lennon goes really dark and serious, like they've just disconnected from whatever affected them from each other. And it's just wildly different suddenly. Everything that comes, it just seems totally like nothing like the Beatles, I think, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and there's definitely a sort of development, isn't there, over the years? I mean, I found one of the things is sorry, Shaun, I will come to you in a second. I found one of the things is that there's a sort of there's a difference between the early period and the later period. I should say I did about half an hour of research and put a list together, provisional list. There's a lot of songs on it, right? But they either there's a lot of early outtakes and a lot of later outtakes, and then in the middle they seem to be more, as you said, like working together a bit. So that creates a slight problem aesthetically when you're dealing with a completely arbitrary list of 15 to 1. Shaun, was this an easy task for you?
Well, no, I couldn't find any Ringo on there. That was the only thing for me. I'm not going to spoil it, but I thought I'd have slightly more George in my list. That's an early spoiler, but wait and see. Wait and see how many George songs I've picked this evening.
Right. All right. Okay.
But yeah, it would. I mean, without the list, I'd have been probably rewatching the Get Back film, I think.
Yeah.
How many hours is it?
8.
8 hours, yeah.
8 hours, yeah. 8 hours of them playing don't, what's it called? Don't Bring Me
Let Me
Down.
No,
Is that what it's called? What's it called, the song?
don't tread on my boogie.
Oh, Blue Suede Shoes.
All right, good. Yes, reliving the wonderful memories of watching the entire Get Back movie. All right, good. Well, look, let's go for it. We're also going to do, I think, a quick section of also rans at the end, just before we get to number one. We should probably get on with it, because otherwise we'll be here all night. So let's begin with our 15s. I'll kick it off if you like. I'll just set the tone. My number 15 is the back seat of my car.
Wow.
From, I don't know why you say wow. Well, we'll see. So this was obviously something that he was playing around with during the Get Back. Here we go. This is the first mention of the Get Back sessions. it's just something that Paul McCartney was playing around the Get Back sessions, and then it ended up landing as the final track on Ram, which is basically his second solo album, wasn't it? Now, I do like this track a lot. I think it's got a nice sort of vibe, as it were. That's not very technical. But I think what's weird about it, I think it's also a weird structure. And I think it's kind of an interesting structure. Basically, I think the whole track is over in about 40 seconds. And then he has to like just keep repeating it and doing different like arrangements and different variations. And actually, of course, at a certain point, there's a really lovely variation that emerges from it where he goes sort of like, oh, I can believe that we can't be wrong. And that bit I think is glorious. And it reminds me of how good he is at sort of contrapuntal writing, because I think that he was very good at melodic writing in general, and that kind of counterpoint he's really good at, sort of thinking of variations on a theme, as it were. He's got a sort of formal, almost classical approach sometimes, McCartney, and I think that the most successful example of that actually is Silly Love Songs by Wings, where he's got like about three different things going at once, and that's a really nice sort of aesthetic exercise. But anyway, yeah, I mean, this is sort of like is in a sense is a sort of preface to that. But yeah, so that's my number 15. Shaun, do you want to go next?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna be quite brief. I've got Goodbye, which of course was sung by Mary Hopkins. I like this. I think it's a nice folkish number. It's very catchy. I think it got to number 2. Follow up to Those Were the Days, and just incredible that Macca can toss off these songs, and here you are, hand them out like sweets. He's amazing, isn't he? And he's producing it. He's playing on it. He's playing, I think, drums, bass, guitar, ukulele, backing vocals. Apparently, there's a bit of lap slapping. Hopefully, his own lap and not Mary Hopkins. Sorry, you missed that one, Peter. Anyway, and it's a great little number. So yeah, Goodbye.
Brilliant. Peter, 15.
Sorry, yeah, I was just checking something. My number 15 was "I'll Keep You Satisfied," the Billy J. Kramer song. I really like this early stuff, and what's odd about it is that because so many bands followed the format that the Beatles set, and very rapidly those bands just sprung up everywhere, these sort of 4-piece bands. A lot of the bands did a very good job of recording those songs, actually. You sort of wonder, if the Beatles had done it, if they could have done it any better, really, I think. But I just think that's a really good, solid pop song, and shows the Beatles' ability to sort of play around, with harmony and melody. They're not scared to veer off, and do something exciting and interesting and tongue-in-cheek, fun, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my number 15. I really like that song.
Yeah, I was just thinking, is it was Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, were they with George Martin?
Quite possibly, if they were getting recorded, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a sort of almost Beatles level quality to their recordings, haven't they? It's high quality, and they're nicely arranged and things like that. Someone will correct us on that, or check that for us in the comments. Yeah. All right, good stuff. Now, number 14, I have From a Window. Talking about Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas.
Yeah.
This is a Paul song, and I think it's slightly Paul heavy, my list, but not completely. Because as Shaun was saying, I think he's so prolific, isn't he? To the point where I think it sort of annoyed the others, really. But yeah, this is another lovely sort of lovely shaped melody. You talk about Goodbye, or I'll Keep You Satisfied. I mean, the melodies are very nicely put together but nicely constructed, I think. This is also, I think, because there's a sort of formalism to these early songs, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would agree with that, guys. I mean, they're almost like theme and variations. They're almost like they're doing classical pieces. They're doing like writing exercises, and they're very good at sort of like varying chord sequences and things. It's like they really were like almost like a couple of Brill Building writers at the beginning. And the other thing is, I think this song is nice because it shows Paul McCartney's kind of literary side, because it's about a window scene. So it's kind of Shakespearean, really. It's a Romeo and Juliet type thing. See something from a window and what kind of implications, the dramatic implications this has. So it's rather literary and quite sophisticated, both formally and at the level of content. Okay, Shaun, your number 14, please.
Okay. My number 14 is Run of the Mill, which is my first George song.
Mm.
It's basically about, the falling out of George and Paul, and the sort of the loss of friendship. A love song to the Beatles, it's been described as. I mean, it's kind of in that spirit of, he'd been hanging around in '69. He had a sort of a little spurt of creativity. I mean, where it came from, I don't know, but he'd sort of been hanging around with Dylan and the band and so on. So, I mean, it's full of sort of not so thinly veiled references to Paul, but it's sort of it's quite a sad song in a way, because I think this sort of friendship with Paul obviously meant a lot to George, and you can sort of tell that, scratch the surface a bit, and he's sort of regretful about whatever's going on between them. But I like it. I quite like the style of it. I don't know why I didn't put it higher, but there we are. It's at number 14 for me.
Great. It's a love song to the Beatles, like a love letter to the Beatles, as opposed to a poison pen letter to the Beatles, which most of his other stuff is.
Yeah.
It's a fine line, isn't it? It's a fine
line between love and hate. Yes. Good. 14, Peter.
It's really worrying, actually, because some of the songs you're mentioning are way up on my list, and we haven't got to number 10 yet. I'm wondering whether you've got other songs that I haven't even heard about. Anyway, my number 14 is What's the New Mary Jane?
Oh.
Which is a bit of an odd choice, really, because it's just like experimental nonsense, essentially, isn't it? But what Lennon can really do with this, and I think what people really like about him is he can slot into this a really good verse. Basically, it's just so comic book, isn't it? It's so daft, the whole thing. I love the play with words. The sort of stupidness of the whole thing is great. It's around that time, a sort of Revolution 9, I'm guessing. The sort of sound collages and tape loops and things, studio trickery, and I just think it's just got this lovely charm to it. The lovely sort of charm. However, there is about 6 minutes of it, so you have to sort of throw yourself into it a bit, don't you? This is not sort of easy listening, but I do think just the verse itself is enough to hold it together, and it's very unusual. So it's kind of up there as being, a favourite.
Very good. Well, we're gonna be rattling through these tonight, I'm afraid. So we don't get too detained. My number 13 is also What's the New Mary Jane. So I'm going to go straight into it. I mean, I think that I agree with what you've said. It's very charming, this piece, isn't it? I don't know why. It just kind of is. I've got a feeling, if I'm not misremembering, that it was Lennon wanted to put it out as a solo piece, or a Plastic Ono Band single with You Know My Name, Look Up the Number on the other side. I think that proposal got vetoed in the Apple offices by, one Paul McCartney. But I think that they are slightly companion pieces. I think that's a good intuition there by John. I mean, because there's something comic about it as well, isn't there? So it's in the same. It's a slightly Bonzo Dog Band, isn't it? This one. Yeah. And I think that we're all kind of fans of the Bonzos a bit, I think. So it makes sense that it is appealing. And yeah, as you said, it goes on too long, doesn't it? I mean, I wonder whether it was a dry run for Revolution, actually, or whether it was recorded after, but I can't remember. I think it came first, but I mean, you'd have to check Mark Lewison's work to find that out.
Diary.
We're not perhaps empirical experts on the Beatles. I should point that out. We're going more from a sort of artistic angle. But yeah, I mean, even John Lennon says it went on too long, didn't he? I mean, he says it at the end of the recording. So let's hear it before they take us away. And so yeah, that's it. It's a very sort of entertaining track for some reason. It's just a complete one off, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sean, you're 13, please.
My number 13 is what's the new Mary Jane?
Oh
You're
my
kidding.
God.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it?
Wow.
I can't say a lot else really, except that he started writing it in Rishikesh. That's what I picked up on. And originally he gave a credit to his good friend Magic Alex. I don't know if you. So I can only presume that would have been the sort of the collage style
Yeah.
music
Yeah.
concrete art.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, it could have slotted in quite nicely on the White Album, I think. You know, I'm not saying it's a crime it was left off, but
Mm,
you know, it would have fit in there no problem, wouldn't it?
yeah. Very good. Would it have been better than Revolution 9?
Yes.
That's
So,
that's that debate put to bed. Um, Peter, 13.
It would have been better, wouldn't it? Yes, 13 is Like Dreamers Do, which is obviously an early song, and I just think it's a really good pop song. I think the problem is now is that when we look at music, it's so varied in genre and, depth, and it's just everywhere, it's just crazily out of control. But you're looking at a time, aren't you, about 1961, 62, where pop music was such a small industry and so specific, and in the way in which it was written. And these are just solid. This is such a solid melody, and they build little surprises in. This is one of the things I always notice about that. That the very early albums is they just drop in these little surprises, moments you do not expect in a standard pop song of the time. This futuristic sort of feel to this, and color. It's like the grayness is draining out and the colors coming in, and I think this is just a really good example of quality writing from them. The Applejacks version, I mean, they do a brilliant version of it, but I do wonder, like, because I've never heard the Beatles version or anything to do with them, whether or not they've kind of added stuff into it, maybe to bring it alive more. I don't know, but it's a really good song just from them, actually. But it just shows, doesn't it, the potential they had, I think, to write a decent pop song, and were free to do exactly how they wanted to do it as well. They weren't tied down, to sort of form and conventions as much. They just went for it, and it worked.
Hmm. All right, good. So that was your 13, was it?
Mm,
Yeah, I'm gonna get lost here, aren't I?
yeah,
Actually, I think the Applejacks took bits out. That's
right.
that's my that's my reading of it, but maybe we'll come back to that.
Will be corrected.
We shall be. So let's go to 12. Thank you. Go to 12. But my number 12 is Bad to Me.
Oh
This is
God.
another Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. I don't know why they gave all their good songs to Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. Was it a Mersey beat thing? Was he Liverpudlian?
Probably.
Someone will tell us in the comments. We'll just say that after every single thing. Someone will tell us in the
Cilla.
comments.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so this is another one of those songs where the Beatles pretend not to have a girlfriend. Um, I just think it's got a great melody, actually. And I mean, to be honest, I've already said that there's a sort of like McCartney is good at constructing architecturally almost melodies, but actually what this shows is that John Lennon could do it as well. I don't know whether sort of like slightly earlier or slightly later, I don't know to what extent they were influencing each other. But really, this is incredibly musically sophisticated. I don't know where the Beatles learned all these
Mm,
jazz chords,
yeah.
you know. And as I say, it's a very sort of catchy melody, and I just think it's great, really. I think they could have been quite happily been on one of their albums.
Do you find, Tim, that I found this song is so overheard. It's like dead. ABBA. This is how I feel about ABBA. Is that you've heard it too much for it to really mean anything anymore. And Bad to Me is on every single compilation album of
Oh,
of anything to do with Mersey Beat or the '60s. Do you feel like it's a bit overdone, this song?
possibly, but I just think it's such an interesting song, and I don't know it that well, because I
Right.
don't sit around listening to Mersey Beat compilations. I mean, sue me. But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think it retains its interest, but I can see
Right.
how it could be, overdone. I just think it's got a nice stride, and so there's these songs all in like about 120 BPM, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's got a nice sort of like brisk, like walking
Yeah.
pace. You know, I think they sort of invented that these bands because they were trying to get away from the skiffle thing, so they slowed it down a bit and they made it a bit more rocky sounding.
Mm.
And but they just sort of constructed these incredible like chord and harmonic and melodic sequences over them. Yeah, I love this one. All right, 12, Sean.
So I've got every night. I don't know why I didn't put it higher. Actually, I just think this should have been a Beatles song. Basically, it could have gone on Abbey Road. I've no idea. Maybe he was doing like a George, and he was sort of saving. Macca was saving things up for later squirreling songs, or I don't know. But I mean, he began it in the mid 60s, sort of work on this, and then you hear him fiddling around with it during the sort of the Twickenham sessions.
Mm.
But I just think it's a great, just to me, it just even the McCartney version sounds like it could be by the Beatles. In fact, my son said the other day, Eddie said, "Oh, that's a good Beatles song." Well, he didn't say it like that, but
Good impression.
yeah. But yeah, one of those that really should have been on a Beatles album.
Mm.
Why didn't I put it higher? I don't know.
Very, very interesting this because
Yeah.
I strongly dislike that song, but everyone
Well,
loves it. People
I,
love
I
it.
yeah, I mean, I'm McCartney does have a habit of writing songs that's quite a few people dislike, but they're still on a bloody Beatles album, and I think this is one of them. I mean, it could have been I'm not saying it's the greatest song he's ever
Right.
written, but I
Yeah.
just think sounds like the Beatles, sounds like Paul McCartney of the Beatles.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Of
I mean,
being
yeah,
Beatles fan.
I don't mean to be
Yeah.
negative. I just it's just that because you sort of read around these songs. People say, "Oh, McCartney's first album is a bit weak. It's got a couple of brilliant songs. One of them is Every Night." And I always think, really, people like that one. It all sounds like a bit of a throwaway to me. But I defer to your greater taste. um, Peter, number
I
12.
don't know about that.
Yeah, you have to greater taste. Yeah, you have to be careful with throwaways, don't you? Because sometimes throwaways can be like just marvelous things. Paul Simon wrote stuff like that, didn't he? Just little things, but they're glorious, I think. Anyway, my number 12 is All Things Must Pass, which, if I'm right, somehow didn't make it onto either Let It Be or Abbey Road, and yet it was there waiting to go on both. I mean, it's a really broad sweep of sort of ray of delight, I think, the song, although I do think it drags slightly. I mean, I think it drags on a bit, but it's just the potential there for something really like amazing is just sitting there waiting to be grasped, isn't it? And in the hands of Lennon and McCartney, of course, who would have done something with it, I'm sure, could have been a glorious song to go on maybe Abbey Road.
Right. I mean, I might be wrong about this. Sean, you tell me what you think, but I think they actually he came up with it at the time of the White Album. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think it was hanging around a while, I think, this one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it might be right.
Astonishing, isn't it? Really. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, good. Um, 11s. So
Mhm.
my 11 is Like Dreamers Do. There's a pattern emerging here, isn't there? Already. Um, I agree with Peter. I love this song. I have no idea. Again, the empirical part is going to come to trip us up here, I think. But I don't. This was written before Please Please Me, wasn't it? Because I think they did this at the Decca sessions. This one,
Yeah.
and why on earth wasn't it on Please Please Me? Why did they? So why were they scrabbling around for songs when they had songs this good in the
Mm.
in the chamber, as it were? I think it's the reason why I said before that the Applejacks took bits out is because there's that bit that it begins and ends with in the Beatles version where it has a series of chromatic chords, dun, 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 and it's just completely weird, that bit. I have no idea where they got the idea to come up with that, but it's completely original,
Mm.
and I just think it's a really great song. I think I'm going to go on the record here. I think it sounds like like a pre-punk, proto-punk song. Like I think that it's kind of evocative of that kind of sound that the punk bands were trying to do later on. And I've always thought I got this weird theory that Morrissey should have done a version of this. It sounds like it could have been a Morrissey song, like sort of post-punk. But
Mm.
like it sounds like one of those songs that it would just sounded really great if Morrissey had sung it. So if you're listening, Morrissey, maybe stick it on a B side. Oh,
He
he's not
does.
allowed. He's not allowed to release records anymore, is he?
He does. He does like those early '60s aesthetics, doesn't he?
He does indeed. Yes,
He
he did.
do.
He did an album of covers actually. Like one of his last albums was a covers album, isn't it? But this wasn't on it. Um, okay, so that's my 11. Sean, your 11.
Yeah, my 11 is My Sweet Lord. Now, this is a song that I think I used to like, but I've heard it so many times that for me it's like the Beatles doing "All You Need Is Love," and I think I got slammed on our Christmas one for saying I was bored to tears of that. This is kind of the same, although I've got to think about it with fresh ears, so to speak. I think possibly if Paul had got involved with this, it might have, because it's slightly. I always think this is just the same thing over again. If Paul could have helped George out a bit on it, I think it might have been interesting and ended up, say, on Abbey Road. But I couldn't see John getting involved with this at all because of the sentiment of it. But I think at the time, this sort of thing, this idea of like the mixing of religions, with the Christian and the Hindu, it's like it's all the same God, man. This sort of hippie attitude.
Sort of ecumenical
I
approach.
mean that was sort of in the air, it was quite, I guess, revolutionary at the time. Whereas now you think, oh, it's so wishy-washy. I don't know, but quite like it, but heard it too many times. But I'm going to throw it in anyway at 11.
Okay, good choice. It's a bit long, isn't it, My Sweet
Yeah,
Lord? I always think it
yeah,
does go on a bit.
it does.
Um, all right. Good stuff. Now, where are we? Number 11,
11,
Peter.
11, yeah.
Yeah.
What I love about this list is the diversity of like reasons, because if there was just a standard way of analyzing songs, you'd never have to do any of this, would you? Just put it through the computer and you just get a list, the correct list.
Mm.
But anyway, my number 11 is Junk. Um, Junk, interesting because of course it's a complete like throwaway sort of feel. I mean, the whole of that first McCartney album isn't it? It has this feeling of just
Mm.
what are we doing?
Like
Waiting for something to happen.
like junk. It's
Like
called like
Junk.
junk.
What a beautiful little piece of writing though this is, and it's perfect in its short form. It doesn't need anything else, and he plays with the melody when he sort of gets to a point where he thinks, right, there's no mid later, or there's nothing else I'm going to do. He starts singing this lovely sort of melody line to go along with it. It's the sort of song Lennon hated, and this is just the divergence that happens, doesn't it, after they split? As this perfect example of what he had to hold in and wait for an opportunity to release. I love the imagery of this as well. This sort of discovery of Junk, in the back room or the backyard or whatever, and there it is. And this is enough inspiration, for him to just run off with it. Just an image like that. This is a fertile mind, doesn't need much, does it? And that it's completely understandable, why he'd run off with that. And it's a beautiful little moment, I think, and very like the idea is so common and everyday. I think there's a beauty to that as well.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Well, my number 10 is A World Without Love.
Oh my God.
Um, Now, again, I like this because I like the sort of shape of the melody, the way the melody snakes around the harmony. I think is very very is a lot of fun really. I mean, it wasn't considered good enough for the Beatles, this track, but it was considered good enough for Peter and Gordon. And I don't know whether Paul offered this to Peter Asher in Jane Asher's kitchen or something.
Mm.
But I think they snapped it up because I think it's a lovely song. Really, I suppose it might have been a bit incongruous, in a Beatles on a Beatles album by this point.
Yeah.
Because the Beatles were sort of pushing into new areas by this point. But I still think it's a great example of a very nicely written early '60s pop song produced by the Beatles and never actually never actually used by them.
Mm.
So that's my 10. Sean, your 10.
That's a good choice. I
Thank
can't
you.
knock that one.
Thank you.
My number 10 is Cold Turkey, which on the B side, John Lennon had that wonderful song "Don't Worry, Kyoko," if you know that one.
Mm.
Very sad song. It's quite a stark sounding record. This, isn't it? It's got that sort of searing guitar on it. Clapton's on it. I think Alan White's on it from soon to be of Yes. Well, not soon to be, sort of a few years later. But I guess the subject matter is a bit iffy, isn't it? Going cold turkey and dealing with drugs and so on. So it's never really going to be on a Beatles album, I don't think.
Mhm.
So why have I picked it?
Answers on a postcard.
Well, somebody tell me. So, but I just like the sound of it, the vibe of it,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I have to say.
It was vetoed by Paul, wasn't it? Apparently, this one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
John wanted to release it as a Beatles single. Paul said no.
Mm.
I don't know at what stage they were at in their sort of like divorce proceedings at this point, but
Mm.
Peter, your number 10.
Did it only take one person to veto a song then? It was just between the two of them.
Well, that's democracy, isn't it?
Well,
Everybody
the
has
democracy would
everybody has
be
a
all
veto.
four. Oh, yeah, but all four of them would be voting, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but you do like democracy. What's democracy is like, majorities, but then anyone has a veto. That's basically perfect democracy, isn't it? Um,
Jeez.
yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So my number 10. My number 10 is Teddy
Yeah.
Boy. Now, this follows directly on from Junk.
Yeah.
Um, this, I think this has got a more complete feel to it, though, and there's some drumming and things on it. What I like is the way that he plays the minor and major. The minor and major change in the chords in the verse as well, which just comes naturally to him, but others maybe not. It can be a bit forced. I think that Teddy Boys have got a lovely kind of story to it as well, and it's so offhand. The way that McCartney sings this is almost like he can't be bothered to sing it. There's something about it. It's very charmingly casual, is what I've written here, which I like. In fact, the whole of that album is kind of like that, isn't it? It doesn't seem very forced at any point, except maybe one song, I think, in particular. But yeah, I really like it. It's something that she's just catchy and I like to sing along to whilst holding a teddy bear.
All right, good. Yes. Yeah, I like that track. It's not on my list, but I like it. Um,
Also Ram.
it's not even an also ran, but I do like it. I do like it. All right, good. Okay, my number 9 is Not Guilty, which is again, an anti-Beatles song, isn't it? As is Only a Northern Song. Yeah, it's a sort of typical curmudgeonly George Harrison song. He's very miserable, isn't he? Miserabilist. And he was always complaining about that. I always think it's weird, like he won the lottery of life being in the Beatles, didn't he? He spent his whole time complaining about it. I suppose it must take a personal toll. I suppose that's the most that's the most magnanimous thing I can say. It's like that interview you sent us the other day, Sean, where he was complaining about having too much money. I mean, some people are never happy, are they? But yeah, I think it's got yeah, I mean, all the White Album songs are kind of quite gloomy, aren't they? But I think this one really works. I think the chordal development is really interesting in it. He often used interesting chords, George. In his defence. In fact, I think it's one of the things that Dylan said about him. He's always uses interesting chords, George Harrison. I think he was right about that. George Harrison was always trying to find different ways to write a song. It doesn't always work, from in my view. But here, I think it does work, and I really have no idea why this was not included on the White Album. 'Cause I think it's better than at least three of the other songs that he put on there. No, that's not fair. But I mean, it's funny these choices that people make, isn't it? I think they did over 100 takes of it, didn't they? It took them ages. I mean, it's always weird that they all complain about McCartney, don't they? For lots of reasons, which I kind of get. I'm sure it must have been difficult working with Paul McCartney. No offense to him or his family, but they always said, oh, Maxwell Silver Hammer took us ages. You had to keep playing it. Yeah, not as many takes as this though. They still couldn't get it right. I mean, the vocal sounds a bit crap. I think the vocal. He's singing okay, but the vocal sound is very sort of echoey. They shouldn't. But the band sound really good on it, I think, and they're all learning some quite intricate parts. There's some time changes and things. So it's sort of typically kind of like experimental Harrison track. And I think this one really works. And as I say, I don't really have any idea why it wasn't included on the White Album. So that's my number 9. Not guilty.
Could it be because they needed room for "Don't Pass"? What's it called?
Don't Pass Me By.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Be reasonable.
That's right. Or Good Night.
But I tell you what, I bet John Lennon didn't like that dum 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 dum, dum that little bit in the middle, because he hated stuff like that, didn't he? He did not like waltz.
Didn't like waltz time.
No.
He was allergic. He was allergic to waltz time.
Yeah, waltz allergy.
Actually, that's funny because during the Get Back film, here we go again. When George is playing the waltz bit from "I Me Mine," John Lennon starts sarcastically dancing, doesn't he? Yeah. So you might be onto something there, Sean.
Yeah.
Okay, Sean, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is "Come and Get It," which, of course, was famously given away by Paul to Badfinger. It's classed as power pop. And it's a typical, it's almost like anticipating the early 70s to me, this sort of 1970s power pop, getting into glam rock, that sort of style. And, it's another sort of throwaway McCartney thing, and you can just imagine him coming up with this, spewing it out. And Badfinger, of course, famously, the band the Beatles thought would be the next Beatles, but they didn't quite live up to the mark, did they? But anyway, and it was in The Magic Christian, the film that Ringo's going on about in Get Back. So and it was a top 10 hit. So could have been a Beatles song, really. This, too easy for McCartney, wasn't it, in those days? So there you go. Come and get it.
Right. Yeah. Also, it's like it's like a sarcastic McCartney comment on the fact that it wasn't a Beatles song. Like, come and get it. Here it is. You're not going to, are you? Right, I'm going to give it to Badfinger,
Right, yeah.
All right, good. Peter, you're number 9.
Number 9 is "Backseat of My Car," which I think it shows that understanding of like harmony that comes out on "Long and Winding Road," I think, which is it's quite sophisticated chordally, this song. So I think that makes it a great song in that it's intriguing what he's doing with the melody on this. And I think it's that pushing of the boundaries that this is where you see the divergence again, isn't it? This pushing of the boundaries of music. What can music actually do? What can we do with a song? Which is McCartney's sort of idea, and that you've got to throw lots of little bits and see what happens. And Lennon's idea at the time, which is totally different, which is, you've got to go back to basics, and the primal scream and all this stuff. You've got to keep it simple. And it works for Lennon really well. And I think, though, something like "Backseat of My Car" is that it's that kind of Beach Boys sort of approach to things, which is, there's a lot to be made. You've just got to sit down and work through all these ideas, and things fall into place, whether or not you even think they work. They sometimes just work, don't they? And I think that, the fact that he plays piano makes a big difference on this. You can really hear the sort of interesting harmonies and things. What I don't like, though, and I mean, this sounds terrible to say, but I don't like Linda McCartney coming in the background. I've always had a problem with her just singing along with things. Like, I'm not sure she's needed in this song, but there she is.
Perhaps she made some nice vegetarian sausage rolls and brought them in with her.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I always think she sings a bit flat. She's not, she's sort of off and off key, isn't she? I mean, I know
It
that.
is flat, but her pastry rises
Yeah, every time.
every
So well
time.
done.
Yeah.
Well done.
All right, brilliant. Okay, so good. Now my number 8 is Another Day. Might be interesting to analyze how many Paul versus George versus John songs we've got.
But it's too late.
But it's too late for that. Yeah, my number 8 is Another Day by Paul McCartney. It's this. I think this is one of his best songs. I think it's one of the best songs he ever wrote. This one. I'm gonna, pin my colours to the mast. I love the way it's like a suite. It goes through a whole series of changes, but they're very natural. And I think it's a bit like Shaun was saying about Come and Get It. I think it's like it's so effortless to him.
Yeah.
He can just sit down and do it. This was. He was playing around with this again during the Get Back sessions, wasn't it? So it could have potentially, I mean, I don't quite know when he finished it, but it could have potentially, been, I suppose, a Beatles track. I think that it's very McCartney-esque in the lyric as well. The way that it's in the third person, isn't it? It's talking about every day she takes a morning bath, wets her hair. He's a third person writer, isn't he, Paul? Excuse me. Excuse me. Bit coffee this week. He writes in the third person, and John Lennon famously wrote in the first person and said, why should we care about any of these bloody idiots that you're talking about? It makes me think of. I saw Stuart Lee, the comedian in Edinburgh, once, and he was saying You're saying I don't do observational comedy because your lives are just not that interesting to me. I'm not interested in observing anything about your life. But I just think it's a particularly fine example of what Paul could do so effortlessly, and the others just weren't even paying attention while the others weren't even paying attention. I love it, and I also, by the way, think it's the opening track to Wings' Greatest Hits, which is one of my favourite rock albums of all time. Because Wings, people have their varying opinions on Wings, but that Wings' Greatest, where all of the sort of good McCartney songs, from the through till about 1977 are collected together. It's a really wonderful record, and my parents used to have a copy of it. I think a lot of households had a copy of that album, and it was really my first experience of that of Wings and all that and McCartney solo stuff, and I just loved it anyway. And this was the opening track. Anyway, very good. So Shaun, number 8.
Good choice. I wish I'd put that one on my list now.
Merci beaucoup.
Anyway, so my number 8 is Give Me Some Truth, which I think is great. It's very acidic sounding.
Okay.
It's got that great line in it, hasn't it?
Did you say acidic or Hasidic?
Acidic, acerbic.
Be careful.
It's got that great lyric about Nixon, hasn't it? No short-haired, yellow-bellied sons of Tricky Dicky. I love it. And George is on the John Lennon version, and he plays a very good slide guitar. I think George, that was kind of his forte in the end, wasn't it? The slide guitar, better than his normal. What do I know? I don't know anything about bloody guitar. It sounds good. But I could imagine, it's a bit of a downer on government and politics. I should imagine Paul said, "We're not putting that out, so jog on."
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Yeah. Good choice. Peter, 8.
It's, so I've got for number 8, I've got Cold Turkey. The thing is with his song is it's so hard hitting. It's nothing like it. Is that you don't get any of this sort of stuff from the Beatles, and then when they split and you get that first the Plastic Ono Band album, it's such a shock actually. And I think something like Cold Turkey is brilliantly stark. He understands how to use rhythm with the words, the way the band play. He uses a really simple figure on the guitar, and then he sings, and then the band plays. For the people on the podcast, I'm using my hands here, and I just think it's so rootsy, yet so buried in like popular culture of the time. It's like a perfect balance. It's really catchy as well. I know that it kind of runs out of steam slightly because after a while you start to wonder what is he doing with the song, and it turns into him going for about 3 minutes at the end. But who has ever written a successful song about heroin withdrawal? I don't think anyone has. It's just cool, hard, honest, and really catchy. And I love the chill effect on the vocals as well. They've got something on his vocals, just enough, like to just give it an edge, which is slightly different to his voice. And, he famously wanted everything double tracked, didn't he? He wanted his voice to be, you know, layered. And I just think it's a great song. Works on in so many ways.
Very good. It's a shame that the people on the podcast missed your hands moving there because it was quite captivating.
I was alternating right and left to show the differences, you
To
see.
show that you could.
Yeah, I have got both hands.
All right, good stuff. Here we go. So, my number 7 is Make Love Not War, otherwise known as Mind Games.
Yeah.
Sort of basically the best track on the Mind Games album, the opening track. On Mind Games, they do it with that slide guitar. Going back to what Shaun was saying, the slide guitar part. This time not played by George Harrison, I don't think, but perhaps influenced by him. He was obsessed with slide guitar, wasn't he, George Harrison? I suppose he was quite good at it, relatively. I mean, that's to be fair to him, I don't think the slide guitar. I think the slide guitar part on Mind Games is nice. I don't think it's necessarily decisive for the song. I think it's a very interesting chord sequence, and I think it's a really good example of what John Lennon does well, which is to take a sort of colloquial expression and just turn it into an amazing piece of art. A bit like, I suppose, Give Me Some Truth or Cold Turkey. I mean, like he's very good at just creating absolutely universal artworks out of almost nothing. I think that I also think one other thing. I love the line where he says, love is the answer, and it's true, which he later changed to, and that for sure, which is actually better. I just think that's a very, touching line, in the middle of it. What's also, the very nice, epic tune. And, because he's a little bit of a philosopher, wasn't he, John Lennon? And he did manage to pull it off, and I think this from time to time, and I think this was an example. So yeah, that's my number 7, Make Love Not War, so to speak. Shaun, your 7?
Nice. Yeah, my number 7 is What Is Life, which I prefer, I think, to My Sweet Lord. I don't think it did as well as a single. I think it was like something like number 16 over here in the UK. Might have done better in America. He wrote this for Billy Preston, and he had a sort of bit of an interest in Motown. So this apparently was his attempt to do a Motown sound. I don't know how successful that was, but he's got that sort of descending guitar riff, which is, I think it's quite catchy. Again, I think it probably goes on too long, but it's a nice sort of, it's a positive song. I think I've always probably liked it. He basically didn't push this. I think, this is another potential Beatles song, really. I mean, it's daft, isn't it? This whole list is potential Beatles song. But I could see this being a Beatles song had the other two got near it. But he didn't even seem to push it to them, or to, he basically, oh, here's this song I've written. And then oh, you don't like it? Oh, well, I'll stick it in my bag, and And then he sort of stockpiled it for himself. He didn't really make much effort. I don't know what was going on with him, unless he was sort of mentally shot or something, I don't know. But apparently the lyrics could be addressed to a girl or a deity. That's nice, isn't it? Multi-purpose.
Yeah,
There you go.
still and sparkling.
Yeah, good choice. That's not on my list, but I do love that track. It almost made my list. That's an also ran for me, I would say. It's one of my favourite tracks on. Sorry, this is not relevant to anything. It's one of my favourite tracks on All Things But Must Pass. That track. I suppose the fact that it's not on my list might tell you what I think of All Things Must Pass. Oh God, no! Let's not go there. Right, don't go there. All right. Imagine the feedback. Right. Okay. So number 7, Peter.
Sorry, just to say, I've recently bequeathed my father's records, and one of them is All Things Must Pass. Did it come in a box? Is that how
Yeah,
it was?
big
Yeah.
box. Yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't looked inside yet, but how many records am I expecting? Is it 3?
3. You can throw the third one away. Don't bother with it.
That's just to protect the other
If you
2.
if you heat it up, apparently, if you put it in an oven in a mold, you can make a really nice flower pot out of it.
Or as we used to say, ashtray.
Well, yeah, well, it'd be much more useful than bothering to listen to it.
That's
But the
true.
other 2 are okay. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for that. My number 7 is Look at Me. I'm a really big fan of that early Lennon 70s stuff. I just think I call it the other Julia, although I think Julia's a better song, actually. There's something that works so well about this, and it's that, like you were saying, Tim, there's grand statements out of very little, and I think that Look at Me, the lyrics are just like huge. He says so little, but it means so much, I think is what it is. It just works so well, and you don't have to go far into the song really to find the beauty of it. I think, again, it gets that point where it sort of runs out of steam. He's not sure what to do with it. There is a moment of complete change, but it's not repeated, and you kind of, you wonder where it's going. I think that whole Primal Scream stuff just brought out, that is correct, isn't it, when I say that? I think it brought out all this stuff so well. It was just waiting to be said, and, it did him a whole world of good. But I always really like Look at Me. I think it's a simplicity to it, which I really like about all that early stuff.
Right. Yes. That's another one I'm not keen on. But actually, as you were saying it, I was sort of going through running through the melody in my head, and I was thinking, actually, that's not bad.
All right.
Much too late for regrets, isn't it? At this point, we're too far in at this point. All right, good. Number 6. My number 6 is Maybe I'm Amazed. Which okay. So again, be upfront about it. I don't like the McCartney album, really, except this track. This to me, this is the key track, the one that I really love. It's a bit it's kind of messy, isn't it? Because it's a lo-fi album. I think he's playing drums on it, is he? And I think it's just the one track where the kind of his genius is, just so evidently, so on display, and I think that there's a bit where he goes, maybe I'm amazed, never beat you, and he goes up into a sort of scream bit.
Yeah.
You know the bit I mean. I'm singing it wrong, but it's that screaming bit, and that's the highlight of the track. Again, to me, that's the key variation which makes the whole track work. The Faces forgot to put that bit in, and I think that's the difference between him and them, basically. In a nutshell, it's the fact that they thought, oh, that bit's not important. It's like that's the highlight of the track, and yet you chose to perform it live, like fools. Anyway, so yeah, love it. I mean, it's not. What can you say about it? It's just amazing. This track, I think. It's also, of course, slightly Lennon-esque, and this is where you're still at this point. I think Peter was mentioning this earlier. You're still getting the dialectic, the John Paul dialectic, aren't you? At this point, later it's broken, and then it all goes to pot. Really, I mean, we could have a debate about that another time.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. Okay, so that's my number 6. Shaun, your 6?
Well, my number 6 is Sour Milk Sea, which I'd never really come across until I was lying in bed one day suffering from COVID. It was my first bout of COVID, and I was sort of passing in and out of reality, as you do, feeling very leaden-headed, if anyone remembers, bunged up, very heady. And I ended up listening to the Isha demos and came across this song, and I was sort of blown away. And then I think I came across somebody on YouTube. It might have used AI to string together, because there's the Jackie Lomax version. He obviously gave this to the Australian singer Jackie Lomax, where it became a top 30 hit in Canada. And so this guy basically edited out Jackie Lomax's sort of tough vocals and edited George in. Now, George doesn't do a very good vocal performance on his demo. But anyway, he's in there. But it's the band, the performance of this song, because you've got Nicky Hopkins on there, Clapton, Ringo, Macca playing bass, and obviously George's slightly weedy vocals. But I think it's a great song, and this should have gone. It's a crime it never got on the White Album. I can only think, he had Savoy Truffle. Maybe it's a similar sort of vibe to that. And maybe this one, is basically promoting the benefits of transcendental meditation. I think the sort of the lyrics. So maybe the others thought, oh, done with that. No thanks, George. We've been there, done that. Worn a t-shirt. But I love this. I wish it had gone on the White Album, but there you go. It never did.
Yeah, this should be a list of the top 15 songs that should have gone on the White Album by George Harrison.
This is why we have to do the White Album podcast. We've got to talk about this.
We need to talk about the White Album.
And Kevin.
All right, good. Peter, you're 6.
Just to point out, sorry, I keep doing this, but I love those Escher demos, Shaun. I think they're so magical. There's something great about them because the potential, they're just so exciting to listen to, aren't they? The primitive versions of what is about to happen, half of which doesn't happen. But I just love those demos.
Although one you could miss off the White Album was Circles.
Oh, God, yeah.
So
yeah,
isn't it? I mean, it's like, God, I mean, he was scraping the barrel of desperation for that one, wasn't
it? How did you guess? How did
about? Oh, I'm doing Birmingham.
Yeah, how did you guess my number 1 though? Not really. Look, here we go. Number 6. Are we on to number 6, Tim?
You are, yeah.
So the song that I've put there is That Means a Lot. Now, I have to say, when I first heard that anthology too, I thought it was just a magical, that song. I thought it was like it had come from somewhere else, that I'd sort of stepped into some alternative reality. Why the hell was that not recorded? Doesn't make any sense. I mean, what we're talking, like 64, 65, something like that, isn't it?
I think it was 65.
Yeah. I just absolutely love that. What a brilliant piece of intuitive writing that is. It's got a key shift in it, which, just doesn't seem natural, but works perfectly. And, when it sort of lifts out the first part of the verse. I think he's such an innovative writer at that point. It's brilliant. I mean, it really suits McCartney's voice as well. It's got that kind of... the version I've heard anyway, it's got that kind of Phil Spector kind of drumming in the background, isn't it? Like they're playing in a sort of, overflow car park somewhere. It really suits his voice though. It keeps moving forward. It's got that lovely drop off at the end of the chorus as well. When it's real. I love that little moment. I think it's brilliant. At no point are you waiting in a song like that. It's not like, okay, we've heard it now. It just repeats itself, but it's really exciting to listen to. I cannot understand how that did not make it onto an album. Amazing.
Yeah, I think it was 65, wasn't it? It's sort of outtakes from Help, maybe around that time, something like that. I tell you what, it's better than, what's that other song that they did at the same time? Is it called If You've Got Trouble, the one that Ringo sang? That is total shit.
But the cymbals are amazing on that. The cymbals, God.
Yeah. I think it's a bit of a throwback, that song. It's a brilliant song,
Yeah.
you're right, but I think it's a bit of a throwback. That's what I would say about that one. I
Right.
can see why they didn't, they didn't quite fit in, perhaps.
I imagine it on like Rubber Soul or something.
Mm.
But you see, would it have really fit? It wouldn't have fitted on something like Rubber Soul. Was it? It's too conventional, don't you think?
No, but the reason why I say that is because possibly that was their next opportunity. I'm just thinking practically.
Yeah. All right. Good. So, um, now we're on to five, I think. And my
Oh.
five. Yeah. My five is "Give Me Some Truth." Already been mentioned. I think that it's completely brilliant. This this track. I don't know why it's not higher. I'm going to try to, figure that out. Go through the trauma of working out why I didn't put it higher. Entirely publicly. But I do think it's brilliant. I think it's a very political song, and I think it's sort of very it's sort of quite Christian, actually, and also political in a sense, perhaps for the same. That's probably good, appropriate for Easter.
Yeah.
But it's this thing about love and truth. He's big on love and truth, isn't he, John Lennon? And I think that's very Christian and and also, very political. Why not? He's sort of screaming this kind of righteous anger, isn't he? Just give me some truth. And what's interesting here is that he says, "I want truth instead of a pocket full of hope," which is an extremely, I think, sort of philosophically astute thing to say. Forget hope; it's all about truth in the end.
Mm.
Now I'm going to contradict myself later on in the list, but I do think, because for me this was like it was between this and something else. I was sort of going back and forth in terms of the John numbers. Um, Although something else intercedes as well. Sorry, I'm getting tied up in knots here. Okay, so I think yeah, just a completely brilliant track, brilliant tune. They worked this up during Get Back as well, didn't they? So it could have very easily been a Beatles number. This, I think, it was pretty
Yeah.
close to being done. Again, one of those ones, as has been mentioned several times, like why didn't they just record it? And they were sort of sitting around going, "Oh, we haven't got any material," and then they had this sitting around. It's like and all things must pass, and all this. All right, good. So that's
Mm.
my number five. Sean, your five, if you will.
I've got Child of Nature, because Jealous Guy, obviously it's got quite touching
Hmm.
lyrics, quite John Lennon sort of bearing his inner soul.
Hmm.
But I kind of prefer this version. I prefer the sort of hippie-ish take on it. It makes me listen to this song again afresh. Um, I don't know. It's strange that this was overlooked. Partly, I don't know. The reason I'm not so keen on the later version is because I of when he died, Brian Ferry did a cover of it, and it's tainted the song. Sorry, Brian Ferry fans, but I just think of Brian Ferry whenever I hear "Jealous Guy." So this
Yeah,
this
careful,
has to-
careful. People love a bit of Brian Ferry.
Sorry, Roxy music fans. But yeah, I don't know. I like this version for some reason. It could have gone on the White album again. So why it didn't, I don't know.
Yeah.
There you go.
Um, all right, very good. Peter, you're number five.
Hello. Number five. Number five for me is Goodbye. Now, I just think this is from the Abbey Road demo. So I think this could have slipped on the end of the album maybe instead of that other song, which is an odd way of ending an album. I know it's just a superb blend, isn't it? It feels like music hall kind of feel to it, like kind of it's jazzy sort of vocals almost, but brilliant singer-songwriter sentiments as well, and well played. I mean, for a demo, I think it swings along so nicely, this song, from beginning to end, with a beautiful little chorus, sort of almost sarcastic kind of ending to the chorus. Yeah, it's just this gift of melody, isn't it? You can't not like a song like this. And I guess getting it onto an album's maybe a bit harder because it's not like Give Me Some Truth, which is like a central pillar of an album. This is something maybe that would have been a bit throwaway and maybe something else came along, so it never made it. But it feels like it's been written in 5 minutes. And sometimes the best stuff is written in 5 minutes. And, sometimes things like Blackbird, and songs like that, you think, maybe it didn't take very long to write. I mean, I don't know, but things sometimes just flow, and his melodies flow so well. They just sort of happen, don't they? And there it is. There's the song. I think it's really nice, this one.
All right, very good. I don't like Goodbye, I have to say. I say that for a bit of diversity of opinion.
Yeah.
You've both mentioned Goodbye. It's
Yeah.
not on my list at all, and not even on the list of also rans. I think it's a bit of I think it doesn't float my boat, that one.
Well, wait for it then, and more shocks to come.
All right, good to know. All right. It's fine, I mean, I think it's great. People like it. I just, I've never quite got that. I don't get it. All right, good. Let's do number 4, aren't we at? Yeah, I'm trying to stay on top of. I'm trying to stay on top of counting from 15
Backwards.
to 1, counting backwards from 15 to 1. So my number 4 is Step Inside Love,
Mm.
which I think is the high point of McCartney formalism. It's a great tune, lovely chords. I mean, totally original, harmony. It's like I was thinking, it's like a Burt Bacharach number. It's that good. In fact, I should say, yeah, this is the highest McCartney number on my list. There you go.
Ah. Mm.
For list watchers. Yeah, I love this track, and I think that it's. The refrain of this whole episode of the podcast is it should have been on the White Album. you know, I think it should have been on the White Album. Really, I think he kind of wasted it by giving it to Cilla Black. Who's I'm not a huge fan of. We shouldn't speak ill of the dead, should you? I mean, I found out she died this week. I didn't even know.
Didn't know.
Didn't know.
That was a surprise for you, wasn't it? Oh dear.
That's terrible.
A Laura fun.
Laura fun. Yeah, I don't just dislike her because she was a Tory. No, she had known politics. Let's not.
Tim,
Talk
are you saying you don't like her recording of it?
I don't. I mean, it was written for her, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of her voice. I also didn't. Neither did I like her on Blind Date, but that's a separate matter. That's a separate matter.
Do you like the demo of that song?
I do. Yeah.
It's good, isn't it? The demo's good.
Yeah, and he was just like mucking around with that
Yeah.
demo version, but it's great. Yeah.
She sounds like a squirrel mating with a foghorn. That's
Yes, her voice is like a foghorn.
yeah.
That's a very good way of putting it. Anyway, all right, good. Shaun, you're 4.
Number 4. Yeah, I'm just blown away by that. My number 4. It's a pity it wasn't on the White Album. Isn't it a pity?
Mm.
Which was. I think there's a funny story to this one because it dates from about 1966, apparently, the origins of this. So, it could have been sort of Revolver era, I guess. But John Lennon said, well, I didn't like it then, and I don't like it 4 years later. So, anyway. But I like this one. It's a bit of an anthem. It's described as a poignant reflection on the Beatles' course ending. So again, it's going over the bones of what's happened between these 4 friends that were so sort of tight. I think basically John Lennon hated it or disliked it. It's probably a bit too sort of negative for a Beatles song. So I'm basically telling you why it was never put on a Beatles album.
Mm.
But I should think that's probably the reason, that the lyrics are too down, too down. It's another George downbeat song, I guess. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it would have been interesting to see what they'd have done with it. Oh, apparently he nearly offered it to Sinatra. So that would have been,
That's a hell of an anecdote, isn't it? What was this song? What's
Nearly.
famous about this song? He almost offered it to
yeah.
Frank
But you can
Sinatra.
imagine him, isn't it a pity? No, that's Elvis. But you can imagine with a slightly sort of jazz backbeat, it would have pepped it up a bit.
Yeah.
Maybe you should have given it to him.
Yeah, I reckon
Mm.
that's going to be a popular choice, that one. That's my
Mm.
intuition, because I think a lot of people really like that track a lot. I shall say no more. Peter, your
Well,
number
keeping
4.
along the theme, yeah, number 4, I've got Run of the Mill. I was really amazed how much I like this song, actually, because I went through, I did go through the playlist. I don't know, I found most of the George Harrison stuff not that engaging. I have to say, I quite like the lyrics. I can see what he's trying to do, but it doesn't always come off. I think Run of the Mill, I really like. It's got an unusual rhythm to it. There's something about the way the rhythm works in the verse is surprising and different. And he's really thought through, the way the words work with the melody as well. It's a really well balanced song. It's got a sort of the melody in parts is sort of sweet, and then it goes a bit bluesy in other parts as well, which the melody flows nicely between those. I think it's the sort of better end of his writing, really, and I pushed it right up to number 4, actually, because it affected me when I heard it more than anything else actually on that album. I thought it was fantastic. So yeah, I've stuck it right up at number 4, but that is the end of the Harrison story for me.
Oh, it ends here, does it?
4.
Yeah.
Oh, not bad.
All right, good stuff. Well, let's go to threes then.
We're getting there now.
We're getting to the end now, top 3.
Yeah.
Now, my number 3 is Cold Turkey. What can I add to what's already been said? It's just a very, again, he's so good with simple ingredients, isn't he? This is so simple. The tune is so simple, so sparse. It's almost the opposite of something that Paul McCartney would write. And yet, once again, you've got this contrast, which makes it so interesting. I can see why McCartney vetoed it. Imagine if this had been the final Beatles single, instead of the Long and Winding Road or Let It Be or whatever it was. They put this out, just the sound of John Lennon screaming for 5 minutes, about his heroin addiction. It wouldn't have been a fitting ending, would it? But so perhaps Paul was right on this one. But I mean, what an amazing song. As I said earlier, Give Me Some Truth is about truth, and then later on I'm going to come to the opposite example. This one's right bang in the middle. I think this just works as a piece. It's got no higher sort of philosophical implication, but I just think it's such a brilliant rock track. Really, I mean, there's not much else to say about it. Really, I just love it. Yeah, it was a wealth of riches. Is that the phrase? The Beatles at this point, they've just had all these amazing songs. Yeah, no, well, I don't like that one. Let's not do that one. It's like, I mean, other bands would have made a whole career out of these single tracks.
Yeah.
All right, that's my number 3. Sean.
Yeah, well, my number 3, I was amazed that it's Maybe I'm Amazed.
You could have done Top of the Pops, Sean.
I could have been DLT, couldn't I?
No, you're not.
No, maybe.
No.
Don't go down.
I was just going back to Step Inside, love. We were talking about Cilla Black and everything. I think the reason is the lyric, because you can't have a man saying to a lady, "Oh, step inside, love." It's a bit creepy, isn't it? But you could imagine Cilla Black in a sort of a negligee with a pint of milk saying, "Step inside, love," and maybe you would take up that offer. But you couldn't have Ringo standing there saying that, could you? It'd be off, wouldn't it?
But it's Step Inside Love. It's not Step Inside, love.
That's what I was thinking.
I
love it.
always get that impression of it anyway. But anyway, right. So my number three, that aside, is Maybe I'm Amazed, which I think is one of McCartney's best. And this could have been an anthem for a 70s Beatles. This could have gone on the Black Album or whatever it is. We've done the Brown Album, haven't we? This be the Black Album.
Mm.
Rolling Stone called it the number 347 out of 500 best rock and roll songs. So it's up there.
Well done.
Yeah, I mean, the guitar solo. I mean, I can't remember who's playing on it. Is it the guy from Wings?
Wasn't it him? Isn't it him?
Is it Hugh McCracken or I don't know. I'm not up on it.
Isn't it Paul?
Is it Paul? Is it Paul?
I think it's Paul. He played
probably.
everything, didn't he?
You know what? I mean, I was just thinking, this is the sort of guitar solo you could never get George to play, could you?
No.
It's such a bloody good guitar solo, isn't it? I mean, I think it's great. It's absolutely great. You couldn't really get George to. George had many talents, but this wouldn't have been in his ballpark, would it?
Playing guitar wasn't one of them.
No, I mean, he couldn't have. He would have done a sort of, I don't know, tremolo effect or something, or a slide guitar, but it wouldn't have worked. Just wouldn't have worked. I mean, going back to, I'm not knocking it, Give Me Some Truth did a great job in that, but I couldn't imagine him pulling off the solo on this. So if that is Paul McCartney, then bloody hell, and he could do everything, couldn't he? He could probably do a bit of plumbing and a bit of DIY.
He did the plumbing on the album.
And bit of Celebrity Bake Off. He'd be good at everything, wouldn't he? This is the trouble. Yeah. I like it. Apparently Lennon hated this song, so I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, apparently didn't like it.
Well, I think that John Lennon didn't like any song written by Paul McCartney that he thought he could have written better himself. You know what I mean? This is one of those, isn't it? It's a screamer.
Right. Yeah. I think that's it.
It's like, why don't we do it in the road?
Oh, God.
Yeah. Let's not revisit that.
No.
Let's not open that can of worms again. Remember what happened last time? All right, good. Peter, your three, please.
Well, you're going to love this, Tim, because my number three is Every Night, which I know you're a big fan of. There's something, though, so addictive about this song. And I know it's like you're saying, well, why do people like this? But I think it's got something to do with the contrast between there's a sort of bittersweet verse to it, which, is sort of thoughtful and, slightly dark. And then it sort of slips into this really jubilant chorus, doesn't it? Like really happy chorus. And those two things are a really powerful blend somehow. They don't seem like they would relate, but they do. And it's just a great piece of melody writing, I think. Something works so well in this song. I'm not sure whether or not he thought it was a bit throwaway. I get the feeling with that first album, almost everything was throwaway. But, it's a really good song. I really like it. I'm on the, 99% camp on this one.
This is weird. I feel like when people start saying, I think Every Night is a great Lost Beatles song, I think I'm in a parallel universe or something. I seriously think, are we talking about the same track? The one that's on McCartney?
The same night. Yeah.
All right, good. Well,
this is heading towards an interesting conclusion then.
Heading towards a tragic,
Well, none of us have mentioned... Neither of you have mentioned my top slot yet, so I'm wondering if it's all going to happen at once.
Well, hold on, we'll find out.
Don't say it.
Okay, so look, number two, right? My number two is All Things Must Pass. I think it's one of the most sort of epic and kind of epically good songs that they never put out. And I will never, for the rest of my days, I will never understand why they didn't put it out. Why wasn't it on the White Album, etc. No, I think Harrison is a sort of was a junior partner in the Beatles writing team. I think it's fair to say that. I mean, how can you not say that? I know occasionally you get people to say, well, no, actually he was the best. or something. But I think he was definitely, the junior partner. But I mean, this is as good as anything Lennon McCartney ever did, and occasionally he does come up with a number that's like, oh, actually, that's as good, almost, almost, if not almost better, And I think this is one of them. It's an unusually straightforward chord progression for him. Very straightforward, and I think he was trying to write something a bit like the band, wasn't he? Like because they all loved the band, because everybody loved the band. The first album by the band, for reasons which are equally inexplicable to me. But anyway, that's a conversation again, another conversation for another day. But I think he's put himself in a straitjacket here. Where he's using some very simple chords, and he's trying to develop an interesting melody over the top of them to make the chords interesting. And he's really, he's really done it. And yes, I think that's all I have to say about it. I think it's. I was thinking earlier, I think it was Sean, when you were talking about All Things Must Pass. I like the album All Things Must Pass. Or at least the first two discs. To return to an earlier theme. But I don't think it's Beatles good, I suppose I would say, and I think but I think it is a good album, by anybody else really. I think it's an album he could be proud of. But tracks like this and maybe My Sweet Lord, although it's not on my list because I find My Sweet Lord a little bit cloying. Yeah. It also, not to mention the fact that it was kind of like it was kind of plagiarized as well. But I think this one and My Sweet Lord and What Is Life, that was the other one you mentioned, was it, Sean? I think they're all really, really, really great tracks. But I think this is really the standout. And I, as I say, I just don't know why it wasn't on the Beatles album. Now, I also don't think really, ironically, All Things Must Pass, the album, really needed it either, actually. Like, there's so much other stuff, good stuff on there that doesn't really require an epic like this, a sort of Beatles level epic. All right, good. Sean, you're number 2.
It's interesting you should say, it's good, but it's not Beatles good. Because I think, you get into the debate of what Beatles solo album actually was Beatles good. I mean, possibly... you get to Band on the Run or something like that. I don't know. Well, the Imagine album, but I mean, you're struggling. I think that's always been my opinion.
That's a very, very interesting opinion, isn't it? I mean, we could do another episode on this, maybe the next major religious holiday. I mean, I think it's a really interesting topic, isn't it? I personally think that almost none of them. Imagine, I would say, I would take to a desert island. I can't think of almost any of the others. Wings' greatest hits.
Yeah, there you go. Great.
Sure.
Okay. I was also going to add that when George died, I remember watching that tribute concert on TV. They repeat it on Sky, and McCartney and Clapton and Ringo came out to sing All Things Must Pass, and God, it brings a lump to your throat. I mean, seeing Paul sing that, I thought that really hit me, because
brings a lump to your trousers.
well, also I think it's quite, in a way, it's quite Paul McCartney-like. I know. Oh, I mustn't get to. I often think George perhaps looked up slightly more to Paul musically, because I think Paul helped him out a bit, slightly more than John. I mean, John would chip in with the odd lyric, for him, but I think Paul was probably the one.
It's very.
Because they were mates, weren't they?
Yeah, it's very telling that the only actual argument in Get Back is between them two, isn't it? It's not between John and Paul, because John's like on another planet by then,
Yeah, doesn't make it. Yeah.
So I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Interesting. Yeah. Anyway, okay, my number 2 is A World Without Love. And
oh my God,
this for me was the revelation of the whole exercise. I thought, oh, that's Peter and Gordon, that's crap, and then I actually listened to it and I thought, fucking hell, that's a really good song, And he wrote it. McCartney wrote it when he was 16, and I can hear
Really?
this, with a bit of maracas and a sort of a bossa nova beat
Yeah.
go on it, and it could easily have got on an early Beatles album. And it's got lovely lyrics. I think they're really meaningful. And again, a song he probably, I mean, to write that at 16, I mean, he was a clever guy, wasn't he? So
List. Peter, you're number two.
It's getting so exciting this to hear the number one. Number two for me is Maybe I'm Amazed. I feel like I'm kind of sealing off the last moment here. Maybe I'm Amazed is if only for that moment when McCartney does the Little Richard thing. It's so great that, like you were saying, Tim. I mean, it actually gives me a chill. There is certain moments in music, and I never know where they are until they turn up, that actually make me slightly shudder. And that is such a great moment in that song. I love that. There's also there's something symbolic about this song, isn't there? Because at the start you hear that kind of echoey piano sound, and then it lifts up that semitone, and I always feel a bit like this is like a statement, isn't it? Like, right, that's done. Here we go. And it's like his career sort of starting almost, isn't it? They're sort of stepping up into something else. I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks that, but I wonder whether it's kind of like a statement of intent, isn't it? Which is, I'm sort of beyond this, and here we go, lifting off. Away he soars. But yeah, it's just a great piece of melodic writing, isn't it? Again, I know I keep saying it, but with McCartney, that's kind of what you get, isn't it? But great screaming section. I think it's brilliant. And it really pushes it for me right up to the top of the list, bar one.
Bar one. All right, good. Well, you want to do also Rans? I mean, I haven't really got any. I've got Come and Get It, which has already been mentioned. I do think that's a great track. There was too many others that I wanted to mention. I should say actually, I put together sort of rough list, so that we could had something to work from. It wasn't a complete list actually. There were other things that I couldn't find or couldn't. I mean, there's even more of this stuff. If you care to search for it, but I think that a lot of it's really, really good. And so there's, in a sense, there are other tracks that could have replaced some of the ones on my list, but the only one that really sort of I felt, great. What's the word? Chagrin. In leaving off was Come and Get It, which I think is a really beautiful track. I just thought it wasn't quite. It wasn't quite unique enough to make it onto my, in my very demanding way, to make it onto my top 15. I mean, Shaun, did you have any honourable mentions?
yeah, I had a few. I had Not Guilty. I had Teddy Boy. I had Look at Me, which I thought was slightly Dear Prudence like. Maybe that's why it got left off. And one that wasn't on the list, but I like from the Get Back film, is Palace of the Kingdom of Birds, which is just a throwaway jam, but there's something about it I think is really nice. And they're not even sort of trying. They've just come up with this sort of psychedelic, slightly progressive rock style sound that they
Mm.
would never consider releasing. But I just think it's really interesting. It just shows the sort of playfulness of them when they're not even trying. They're still coming up. McCartney was behind that, and he's still coming up with something good. That could. I think did he reuse it in a McCartney album or something? I'm sure he
I know.
he recycled it. But anyway, that's mine.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying earlier, sorry to repeat myself, but there's such a great hit rate, didn't they? The Beatles, they're so effortlessly producing like dozens and dozens of amazing songs and like coming up with good ideas all the time. It's very, very unusual for bands to do that, I think. Peter, what do you do? You anything you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, barring a few on that list, pretty much everything could have been as an also ran. That's the problem, I think. I really like Give Peace a Chance, although it's very hard to work with a song like that, isn't it? When essentially all you've got is a chorus, but it's a really good chorus. I really like Come and Get It as well. I think I'm not sure how it would have slotted in really, but it's got a kind of originality to it, isn't it? I think I really like Hello Little Girl, the sort of early attempt because it's the purely because of the sort of comical nature of it. They just really throw character, don't they? This is the charisma that that they were seen to have, beyond other bands, the sort of comedy of it. Sour Milk Sea, I really like the verses, but it does remind me of Savoy Truffle a bit. So maybe not so original in that sense, but I think it sustains well, that song. It's a bit unusual. It's quite good with the sort of angular melodies. The last one I wanted to mention was Bad to Me, which I have to say, does this song have the most controlling lyrics I've ever heard in my life? Because one of them is, but I know you won't leave me because you told me so. It's like, Jesus Christ. And some of that early stuff is a bit like that. It's like not quite understanding, isn't it? And there's another lyric, I'm telling all my friends I'm in love. It's like, you better bloody stick with this because I've told them. It's horrible. But I
Yeah.
like the song.
Yes, it's a sort of exercise in toxic masculinity, isn't it?
That's right.
A la Lennon.
Before it was popular.
All right, good stuff. Well, listen, I've now got an idea for another follow-up episode where we do like what were the worst songs that the Beatles ever wrote. Top 15. Just get the 15 actual bad ones.
Yeah, the Brown album.
Oh yeah, but even worse than the Brown album, like outtakes that were. All right, good. Okay, well, let's go to number one. My number one, funnily enough, is Give Peace a Chance.
Wow.
Now, I feel slightly embarrassed about this, but there's a sort of I said earlier that there was they were creating a space for truth. John Lennon was creating a space for truth and kind of ruling out hope. This is the other side of it, the little space that remains for hope. And I suppose a little bit of me is, like hippie-ish enough to enjoy the sentiment here. I think this is like an early. I was thinking about this. I was thinking it's a sort of early, like an early rap song. This one, like because they got that sort of is it called Sprechgesang bit. And the verses are kind of fun. He's kind of rapping. It's a bit like Empire State of Mind by Jay-Z and Alicia Keys. It's got a great chorus. And kind of rapped verses. And I just think that, like, again, it's so sparing, the construction. And I think it's so sort of like open-hearted, and I think that chorus is just such a, like a great tune. And I think he was very good, John Lennon, at, as we've said before, about dealing with like bare bones stuff. But he was also very good at like just coming up with the right idea in the right moment. They had when they did All You Need Is Love. Apparently, Brian Epstein said to them that we're going to have this worldwide satellite broadcast, and like potentially like 1 billion people could be watching. And John Lennon said, "Yeah, I could write a song for that," And he just comes up with the right thing. I know that Shaun is famously, a critic of All You Need Is Love, but I think it's the right song for the moment, and it's got for me. All You Need Is Love got enough about it that it kind of works. And this is another one, it's like, oh, we're just sitting here in a bed somewhere in New York. I think they were because they were tireless campaigners for peace, weren't they, John? Yeah, okay, there was nothing they wouldn't do. Stay in bed
to watch
for 2
TV.
weeks, to watch TV for 2 weeks. They planted acorns for peace. They got in a bag.
Yeah. Literally nothing they wouldn't do.
Literally nothing they wouldn't do. And, I just think like he's obviously sitting there thinking, right, now what we need is an anthem for peace. And I just think this is perfect. And so I think it's like, I think what I like about this is it's a couple of things. It's situational, so it's kind of like, as I was saying, he's kind of like, this is what we need now. And I think it's a very sort of strong artistic act. And yeah, I think the sort of the open-heartedness of it is, I think is to be welcomed. Especially in these testing times.
It's a fascinating choice. It's a fascinating choice for the first for your number one, Tim, because it's like it doesn't quite have the elements, does it, of any other song? There's something completely different about this song, but at the same time, I put it as an also ran because I think the chorus is blindingly good, but actually the rest of it kind of is up for grabs, a little bit. But I can see what you're saying. I can see what you mean.
Well, I think it's one of those moments, isn't it, where
Mm.
you have to decide. Do we give peace a chance or not?
In this list.
Yeah. Do we give peace a chance a chance?
Wow.
Okay. Good. Sean, you're number
Yeah,
one,
it
please.
was kind of a happening, wasn't it? A
Yeah.
happening, really. Yeah,
That's right.
good one. Um, my number one is All Things Must Pass. Bit unoriginal. But the Beatles did 70 takes of this before binning it, and again, I can't really understand why.
Mm.
No, it's the mystery of the Beatles. I think this song.
Only
Uh,
McCartney could throw light onto it now, couldn't he?
yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean,
But he won't.
No.
John famously helped him with some of the lyrics, didn't he? Like he sort of suggested a mind can blow those clouds away instead of the wind can blow those clouds away, which wasn't quite as good. So, there you go. I said he was more, he worked a bit more with McCartney, but when John chucked a line his way, he sort of snapped it up as well. So um yeah, George, I think, he didn't show much inclination towards songwriting, did he? And then, you get to sort of maybe Rubber Soul, there's the stirrings of something, and then you got Taxman, haven't you, on Revolver. And, I mean, hanging around Lennon and McCartney, I mean, obviously it's done, it's like it must have been like having a blood transfusion or something, but it definitely, would he have been the same guy if he'd have been in I don't know, Freddie and the Dreamers or something like that? Could he have come out with this stuff? Was it,
Yeah.
or just was it that sort of febrile atmosphere? And he you know to be fair to him, he was the third best songwriter in the Beatles, but no, he did when he was good. I think as Tim said, I think he wrote songs that were easily as good as Lennon and McCartney, and it's tough being that. I always think it's tough being that outsider. I mean, he was McCartney's little mate. He was the youngest of the Beatles, wasn't he? So it's a bit like being the little brother, isn't it? It's like being the little brother and getting your voice heard. I mean, I relate to that because unbelievably, I was the little brother. Now I dealt with it by being really annoying and doing stupid things, because you can't compete with your elders. You just can't. So you find ways around it. But he just got really grumpy, didn't he?
I think McCartney said, didn't he? He did comment on that. I
Yeah,
remember reading something about him saying you never really outgrow that
yeah,
school, that sort of school levels, like
yeah,
you're in the year below me, never
yeah,
actually goes away.
yeah, yeah. But I think they did. I mean, the fact he was you know playing slide for John Lennon, and I think they admitted, didn't they, in the Get Back documentary that or the Let It Be, that maybe they didn't handle him very well. But then they were the powerhouse of the Beatles, weren't they? I mean, you're not gonna mess that situation up, are you? To go and
To
say, oh
appease,
yeah,
yeah.
we'll let you do circles, or something
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, I mean, maybe he was not handled well. I mean, I think this is turning into a eulogy on George, isn't it? But
Mm.
I think various Beatles engineers said that, you know, maybe music didn't flow from him as freely as, say, Paul, so he'd do a lot of takes to get what he wanted. So maybe that went against him. I don't know, but a song like this, it's strange. Maybe even George Martin didn't say, you know, come on, lads, you know, this would be a good song for you. But perhaps he was out of the loop a bit by then. But there you go. That's my number one.
All right, good stuff. I like that Ginger Baker quote that you sent us a couple of weeks ago, Sean. Where he was saying, like, none of these musicians could explain anything about what they wanted. They couldn't write any of it down. He said, I was playing with George Harrison. He said, he asked him what he wanted. He started waving his arms about. He said, what was I supposed to make of that? Anyway, Peter, over
Wow.
to you.
Well, I'm amazed that no one's got my number one. I thought we were all heading in the same direction, but we haven't, which is fantastic. So my number one is Jealous Guy,
Oh,
which I just think, like, when Lennon sort of drops the pretense, you know, like he pushes so much aside and he spends most of his career with the Beatles kind of in denial about things. And then he suddenly comes out with all this truth, you know, like Beatles, those first couple of years. It's incredible. It's sort of 69, 70, 71. And I think Jealous Guy is just such a brilliant statement. I mean, it's so acute, well observed, honest. The chorus just beams with sincere regret. I mean, you can really feel it in this. It's just like the orchestration of it and everything, I think, is kind of heading towards one aim. He really has made this statement work. It's just so apt to the theme of the song. And I think the strings, you know, coming in, which, you know, normally strings, you know, associating with that, you know, and the sort of whistling, this kind of slightly off theme whistling thing just is a lovely kind of moment in the song as well. And I just think it's this effortless writing, you know, and although his melodies are never really as complicated, this is an example of a brilliantly written song, I think. And it had to top the list for me, really. I just think when he, you know, drops the sort of worries about what other, you know, other things and just does it as it really should be done and doesn't worry about, you know, what people think. It's just he comes up with gems like this, and I just absolutely love this song. I think it tops the list for me.
great. Well, I mean, yes, I mean, the reason why I didn't put it on mine, and because I think you're straining at the limits of what constitutes a Beatles outtake here, because I think it also think it's a great track, but it wasn't quite in the form that the arrangement and the lyric that it finally had while he was still in the Beatles. I think he reworked it because Sean had it under Child of Nature, which is, you know, so
Yes.
like a lot of the like the melodic and harmonic elements were already there, I think. But I don't think
I
it
just,
quite
yeah.
became Jealous Guy until slightly later on. That's all. That's all.
Right, but it was on the list. I think that's why it's on my list.
Ah, yes, okay. Well, but I'm quite glad because you actually at least took the emphasis off my choice of Mind Games, which came out like at least like 3 years
Yeah.
after the Beatles had split up. But I just used that as an excuse to you know, to kind of like shoehorn it in. So I think I'm a greater offender than you. All right, so wonderful, wonderful stuff. Thank you ever so much, guys, and we will see you on the next edition of Crapper, which should be coming up in a week or two, I think. But I won't give you any more details at the moment because I don't know what they are. So goodbye to you, Sean.
All right.
Goodbye to you, Peter.
Goodbye, world. Thank you.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.